Hello, everybody. Welcome to Northern Disclosure, where Rob Morrow, my handsome, very oh-so-talented co-star, and I walk through episode by episode of Northern Exposure. This is my kitty cat, Bonnie Bell Tigress. Say hi, Bonnie Bell.
Bonnie Bell Tigress.
Bonnie Bell, say hi.
What's up, Bonnie Bell? Beautiful.
Oh,
look at those
oh,
eyes.
there she
Wow, so pretty.
She's in my lap biting me, so I'm like, fine, you get to say hello. Anywho, hi, Rob. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Janine. How's your mom doing?
Thank you for asking about my mom. She, for those who haven't been listening, she had fell and broke her hip, and then we had hip surgery, and then we had rehab, and I'm with her 24/7, and she lives with me, and then she got pneumonia. So we've been fighting the pneumonia, and then she fell 2 days ago, but she survived it. Didn't break anything. Didn't hit her head, and so thank you for asking. But my mom she's healing. She's healing.
Well, we wish her the best. So speaking of moms, this show has got a lot of mom in it. We meet Maggie's mom in this episode called Burning Down the House, which was written by Robin Green, once again, the prolific Robin Green. And Rob Thompson, our producer at this point, he becomes an EP, I think, eventually, right? But he's a producer on this episode, and he directed it and did just it's an iconic episode. People talk about it. It's one of the ones that people talk about all the time because of the fling, which happens at the end, Chris Stevens' art project. And I love this episode. I mean, it's about art, and Northern, occasionally deals with the idea of art and what it means to us culturally and as a civilization, and they hit on a lot of cool things here, as well as being a story about a mother and daughter, and I thought your performance is really, really moving. My wife was watching with Devin, and she kept saying, "God damn it, Janine is so good in this." It's just there's so much going on for you. You must have had fun. Do you have any memory of making it?
This one I remember everything, and I just want to and thank you for those kind words. You're always wonderful, Larry Coe. That whole third storyline there, but
Larry Coe's funny.
Larry Coe. Feel better now, But and of course, this episode is iconic. They had T-shirts. It's not what you fling; it's the fling itself. And I have a lot of memories with the show, and I just want to give a shout out to BB Besh, who's passed. And I wish so much watching her in the show that she were still alive. I kind of had a real affinity for her, and we connected. And this show was a great show, a great arc for me. I was really excited to be able to show, in this episode, Maggie takes her walls down because it's forced upon her with the burning of the house. So you finally see a vulnerable Maggie, a teary Maggie, a Maggie that's trying to cope and that she's upset. And that relationship, the way they wrote it between mother and daughter was just fabulous. And I think one of the things, and I remember everything about it. I remember filming when the house was burning that night. Really, it'd be fascinating to find out how they did that. And then when I showed up with John Corbett and we walked through, it was freezing cold. It was freezing cold. We walked through the burnt house. I remember everything about that. I remember all my scenes with BB Besh, and the kind of arc that happens. And I think one of the things the scene on the bench where she doesn't want to talk to her mother at all, and her mother comes. She goes, "I wish I'd burned down the house
Which
earlier."
ends in I love the shot. It ends with a kind of a wide shot of the two of you on the bench and the antler horns or the moose horns up there. It's just a beautiful tableau.
On the bench outside.
On the bench, yeah.
Yeah. And she goes, "I wish I burned down the house earlier." And then her mother had actually thought about it when Maggie was 2, burning the house down then. And she looks at her and goes, "Is it some sort of pattern?" And she goes, "You need to burn the house down. You need to do something with your life." And these great lines by Robin Green. She goes, "Mom, I live in Alaska. I'm a pilot." I mean, it's just so great. But I think at the very end, when she goes in to see her mother and just the maturity and growth of Maggie O'Connell to be able to look at her mother and the vulnerability when she asks her mother to stay for a few days and she doesn't. Maggie's never going to let you know she needs something. Like, "You could stay a few days, Mom, if you like," and she doesn't. And she she accepts her mother for who she is at that moment. She's very depressed about it. It can make me cry, right? But she accepts her mother at that moment. And I thought that was a real kind of maturity of Maggie. But I love seeing the vulnerability. You and I love this with the hair back and the clothes that don't match.
It's an interesting arc. So the arc would be it's by accepting her mother, she accepts herself ultimately, right? And I think it's an interesting thing because we said, the whole the theme of the show is art, and even though your storyline is not around art, it is in that. I think Picasso. I don't know if this is a quote from the show, but Picasso said that every creative act starts with an act of destruction, and so your house, the creative act of your life, is facilitated by this act of destruction. It's all the things about the phoenix rising from the ashes and all that. And it really feels like Maggie has a turning point here. Of course, like all our characters, they regress the next episode a little bit,
Right.
but not totally. Like there's something here, and certainly the audience knows her better. And your performance was great. I'll tell you the synopsis that it says on IMDb, which also this is listed as season 3, episode 14, although Amazon has it as season 3, episode 13. But the synopsis they give is Maggie's mother visits unexpectedly and is bearing some unwanted news. Chris is looking for visual inspiration for his next conceptual art project, and Joel is convinced that a local chimney sweep is a former pro golfer. So we'll give a shout out to John Jackson, who played Larry Coe. And also, I just want to point out that BB Besh's daughter, Samantha Mathis, is a lovely girl I know, and a really terrific actress.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And if you think about it too, when she says, "You didn't just ruin my life, you ruined my life." I think
that's a great line.
Right?
That's a great line.
And to be able to find a way to emotionally get to that depth of layers, to play those lines and have them just be not indicated, but to be coming from someplace that's really genuine. But her mother first comes and tells her she's getting divorced. So everything she thought her life was built upon. So in that respect, it is kind of everything burns down in her life, not only her house, but her whole perception of her parents and family and what that meant. And she has to kind of rise up from that.
Well, let's bring out our beautiful and lovely guest.
We have our beautiful, lovely co-star, Cynthia Geary, and I just adore her. We have become closer and closer and closer, and I just think she's amazing. And I was talking to Cynthia yesterday. I said, Cynthia, we talk about you on the show all the time, how brilliant your performances are. When you were dressed up as a 50s, or when you're Holling thought your feet were big, but your performances are just iconic. And it was the first thing you ever did. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Cynthia Geary. We're so happy to have her with us today.
Hi. Thanks for having me again to talk about a show that I did nothing in.
That's not true.
Oh, well, I walk in and who knows? I can't even remember what I said, but I was listening to your intro, and one of my favorite things, it's a line that you said, Janine, in this show, and it's you said, my whole life I've been rebelling against something that didn't exist. And that really hit me now that I'm, a mom of close to almost adult children. And you look back at your parents, and that's what I think one of the things that strikes me now watching the show 30 years later is how just spot on everything was, and how they were so subtle about the way they did things and said things, but really the points they made. I look and I'm like, you're right. I look at my parents and I'm so appreciative, and just all of the things that I thought I was rebelling against. Now I'm like, they were right.
Yeah, for sure. And also like the to what you're talking about in terms of the details and the way they set things up. I mean, just the way Maggie's dressed, in that kind of mohair sweater and the frilly shirt.
Hilarious.
Yeah, it's really funny, and it changes her completely.
Yeah, you're dressed like you would have as a child for your mother, just to all of that, wanting your mother's acceptance and that we do as kids, but we don't want to admit it.
So true. And I think when we get older, we're all in well, you're not quite 60 yet. Are you 60, Cynthia? I don't know. I'm 62.
I'm 60.
Okay. Well, we're all in our 60s now. So, but we can look back now, and life teaches us, oh, wait, I can relate to my parents so much more now. And I can be so much more forgiving of them now than I was then.
Right. Oh, I have told my parents so many times. I remember, like, after I had my children, and these were when they were still young and babies. And I called my mother one day and I said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was so hard. And,
Right.
I mean, which I don't know. I was a good kid. I didn't get in a lot of trouble, but just you don't realize how much your parents love you and do for you and care and want the best for you.
Right. Yeah. It's the great gift, and you don't, and it's funny that it takes a lifetime to realize it, that we can't know it then. But once you have a kid, you certainly know it.
Well, and the older you get, the more fallible we all seem and the more forgiving we can be of our parents.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the way I thought BB Besh was amazing in this episode too. I thought she played it spot on.
Yeah, she was great.
And she was, by the way, both you and BB are in Steel Magnolias.
That's right. That's right. We had the experience together in Natchitoches, Louisiana. That's right. That's right. We were the cream cheese family. I had worked with John Cullum, Barry Corbin, and BB Besh before Northern Exposure.
Well, I even think, I mean, and maybe I'm wrong, Janine, but I think she looks a little like your mom.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
A little bit, for sure.
You guys she was great casting.
Yeah, she was. And, it spooked me because, and I asked Josh about this later. It's like, no, we didn't know. My mother loved and still loves orange marmalade. And so I have to go in there and get orange marmalade. And it's like before Siri, it's like before they could have been listening. I'm like, how did they know that my mother loves orange marmalade? It was just kind of weird.
I love the whole thing. I wrote it down. The Jane O'Connell regime: swim 66 laps a day, hot lemon water, half a dry English muffin with marmy every morning.
Right. 66 laps.
So, okay, I have to admit, I had to watch the show last night so I would remember it because, you forget.
Oh, yeah. No, you have to.
And it was really funny because I think just maybe a couple of days ago, I was out walking the dog with my husband and we were talking about Northern Exposure and just talking about the things I'm like, oh yeah, there was one episode where Janine talked about Ferragamo shoes, and then Ferragamo starts sending shoes. I'm like, it was before they product placement, which now today we're so used to it. I'm watching TV and seeing, Gain detergent has the Wizard of Oz on it or something, which I'm like, how does that connect? But you can get Oz scented Gain detergent.
Right.
Really, there is a commercial. It smells like Oz, and I'm like,
I guess Oz smells clean or something.
The marketing person said that's a great connection, but I just remember the Ferragamo shoes and how cool. Shelley at one point said something about Swatch watches, and I have all these Swatch sent me like their Swatch collection. It's so cool.
Why do I remember none of that? I don't remember anybody sending me anything.
Yes, you got stuff. We all got stuff. I got so much stuff. I still have stuff out in the
Honestly,
garage.
I don't think I did. I don't remember anybody sending Ferragamo shoes. Did you
remember everybody talking, or maybe that was the conversation. It was you wanted Ferragamo shoes and you didn't get them. But you didn't send them. The rest of us had gotten stuff. I mean, if you happened to mention something, I had got Swatch watches, and maybe it was like, we're all like, where are the Ferragamo shoes?
Yeah, I would go in there every season and I was playing a lot of golf at the time, and Joel played golf, so I would mention the kind of golf club I wanted, and then they would show up a week later.
Okay, I don't know, man, but I'm glad y'all got some swag.
Ray-Bans.
Ray-Bans, yeah.
I miss those days.
again, this episode to me deals in thematically with so many things that are important to me, and art is like the central most important thing in my life. And the way Chris comes up with this idea of flinging something. First, it's a cow, as because he wants to do something that's never been done, which is just such a great, I mean, that's what we all strive for. Like, I know I get so frustrated when I feel like I'm doing something that's been done before. And his journey is great. It's him too, the way he looks. He's like in this disheveled, jumpsuit, and his hair is a mess, and he's just completely enthralled with this project. It's I just found it really really fun and such a great idea.
Did you notice every time they played, you were in one of Chris's scenes? We all have our own theme music, and when they were playing Chris's scenes, did you notice it was like a medieval tune?
Oh, was that it? I don't think I did.
Yeah, the music was, in my opinion at least, was kind of medieval-y, something coming out of medieval times, because it was kind of this whole medieval thing, flinging something, building a catapult.
By the way, that fling, that catapult, they brought in this guy from London, I think, who worked for Python and did theirs, but was from London. They flew him in, and he had about 10 days to design this thing. And when you look at it, when we see the wide shot of it, it's incredible feat of engineering, and really beautiful. I forgot where it ended up.
Well, it was in a field in Roslyn somewhere for a long time.
Oh, they left it there?
They did, but I think it had since been moved, or someone bought it or dismantled it and took it somewhere else. But it's really interesting. My husband is a mechanical engineer, and so he's watching that thing, and he said, "Oh yeah, the difference between a catapult and a trebuchet is a catapult, you put something in the arm, and the arm moves slowly and it throws something. But a trebuchet, that when that was developed, it's the rope on the end that makes it, that starts moving really, really fast, and you see the piano move really fast, and it gives it it's so much more, the velocity is stronger, and it's more violent. And I remember watching that, and I'm like, oh, well, that makes total sense, because when we were watching it, the piano started to disintegrate in the air before it hit the ground, and it's because of the force on it.
Oh, so it's really a trebuchet. It's really a trebuchet then.
It is a trebuchet, yeah. And the way Rob shot it was so great. I think he had 4 cameras running, and 1 or 2 of them in slow motion.
One, on the ground and above.
Yeah, and it was just so he prolonged the whole sequence and made it
with 2001 Space Odyssey music.
With the 2001 Space Odyssey music.
That was great.
And the way they cut to each of us, it's one of these, one of my favorite things in this series are these events where we're all there for, and we see all of our reactions, they were, but I do remember when we filmed it, when they filmed our close-ups, they couldn't fling the piano because it was just, they had 2 pianos, or I don't know how many they had, but they couldn't keep doing it. So there was Jim Charleston with a long stick with a tennis ball, and we were supposed to kind of follow it and just kind of like imagine what's going on, and then someone would be yelling, "Now it's breaking apart," And
I remember that. I remember, Cynthia, do you remember that? I actually remember that.
Yeah, I remember watching the real thing, and it was so cool because everyone cheered. I mean, it was, we didn't know what to expect, and they're like, okay, we got to get it in this one shot.
Well, I guess that's what I mean, is that all these scenes where events happen and we're all watching them, we are moved as characters, but as people, we're equally as moved. So it's not fake. Like, we're not faking that. It's like, oh my God, there's a piano flying through the air.
Yeah, it was so cool.
That's interesting for 2 reasons, I think. One of which is, and Rob, you kind of touched on this, we all responded to it in our characters' own, from our our own perspective. Maggie's looking at it like, okay, that was a piano from my house that just burned down, that type of thing. So I think that's really interesting. But also I think it's interesting to note that we watched kind of in a master shot, or maybe with cameras weren't even on us. We watched it fling, and they weren't on us. We watched it fling and get destroyed. When the cameras were turned around on our faces, we were looking at the tennis ball. They didn't do it again. So we all had to pretend that we were watching something.
Right. But I think I can't remember whether we probably shot our close-up second, so we had at least the experience to draw on.
Well, that's acting. That's where
That's acting.
Yeah.
I wrote down what Chris says because I thought it was just so cool. I go to encounter for the millionth time the reality of experience and to forge the smithy of my soul, the uncreated conscience of my race.
Wow.
It's about a commitment to become a great artist.
That was the other thing I got to say that's impressive. The Corbett's dialogue, especially, it was always heavy and, full of references to famous writers and poets and artists. But this one, he had so many just speeches, paragraphs, and it was impressive.
I have such respect. I had respect for him then, but watching these episodes and seeing what he had to do, and he made it seem so organic,
effortless.
Yeah, like it just kind of came, and you buy it. Like there's something amazing about the way they wrote for him. We always talk about it.
And the last scene with the fling itself, he was talking about all the philosophers, and he had a mouthful, and when he had to do that. But I loved the way, Mimi, we think we're gonna have on as a guest at some point, but my clothes were really great. Those kind of I loved looking like a hobo, that adds so much to my character for what she was going through. But Corbett's character was great too, with the kind of dashing knight type of flowing jacket.
They were so smart the way they and we go to Cynthia's earrings, which are a set piece unto themselves. Every episode, her earrings reflected some kind of plot point or story point. And it'll be interesting to speak to Mimi about it because it's like, it's tricky to have the characters reflect the story without also taking away from who they are. Like to all of a sudden Chris is in this jumpsuit and Maggie's in this frilly shirt, but it was appropriate to that story and it seemed to work. And I just kept thinking like, oh, what does Maggie have? Like one drawer, the bottom drawer has like one outfit that she saves for when she's going home or when her mother comes, and the way her mother talks to her, it's like, she's so condescending, you start to understand a lot of why Maggie is the way she is, her mother's, when she says, do you have a clean towel? It's like, which ends up being the thing that burns the house down,
I thought about that this is one of the reasons Maggie's probably so closed off. Because she really holds all of her feelings. She hides a lot of her feelings. She doesn't really show them often.
Right.
Because first of all, she's losing all those boyfriends. So she's getting a bit wary. But also she never got really any affirmation, or no one really, you know what it is? They didn't see her.
Right. They projected who they wanted her to be. Exactly.
The beauty queen. Yeah. She had to be the Grosse Pointe Country Club beauty queen.
That's why she's such a great character, because she's so different. She's forged this life. Talk about the smithy of my soul. She's forged this life for herself that is, so the antithesis of the way she was brought up.
That's why I love that line. Well, I'll say it again, when she goes, burn the house down, Maggie, just burn the house down, which was where her mother was. Her mother was in like, let me start her. And Maggie's like, Mom, I live in Alaska. I fly a plane. I just think that was one of my favorite lines. But Cynthia, I think that those scenes that you were in were also wonderful, because that dialogue that the four of you had around the table, and I think was it all one scene? That was some brilliant dialogue as well. And y'all did a great job.
Okay, if you're watching or listening to the podcast, I'm a huge fan of Aura frames. This is the coolest invention in a long time. I mean, digital frames have been around for a while, but they've been such a pain in the neck to use. Aura Frames has a really simple process. It comes to you in this beautiful box, or you send it as a gift in this beautiful box, and you get the app, one-step process. You get the app, it's free, and then you load your photos onto that app, and they go to that frame, whether it's for you or someone else. It's a great gift. If you don't know what to get someone this year, get them this. I promise you they're going to dig it, and it's easy to use, which is the key, right? It's easy to use, and all the pictures we take have finally a place to live, except on our phone. So I can't say enough about how cool this is. It's if you don't know what to give someone this year, this is the gift. Keep it in the back of your head. If you're at the 12th hour and the holidays coming up the next day, send one of these. You don't even have to get the gift. You can send it directly from Aura with your photos loaded with a message. So I say check it out. This is a pretty cool thing. And for a limited time, you save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get 35% off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code Northern at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code Northern. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply.
Like, what's flow? Nobody knows
Right.
what flow is.
Right.
Yeah.
And Colum's like, I don't know. But of course, Corbin knew. But there was some, do you remember you watched it again? And then, Rob, you come in and you realize, and nobody gets what you're trying to say about golf. And everyone's like, well, it's okay to fail every now and then. And it's okay to move on and move to Alaska and Greenland. And no one sees what you see. But let's talk about those scenes for a minute that you were in, Cynthia, because I thought they were kind of fun. And I also love the scene with Corbett that you had at the very beginning, when you're seeing that he's kind of this Renaissance, Leonardo da Vinci type of character with his drawings. Yeah, talk about those for a second.
And she's so open. Shelley's just so curious and open. Like she's just and accepting. Accepting is the word.
Well, that's Janine and I were chatting yesterday and just talking about it, and I said, well, a lot of that was, I think Shelley I approached her like a child, and again, going back to the wardrobe thing, my wardrobe helped me so much, my costumes, because as we talked about on a previous podcast, that Catherine Bentley had the idea, and we sat and talked about it, that she dresses like a child. I mean, it's all the colors and all this stuff going on and blah 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 blah, and everything is kind of mismatched.
It's funny because as you're saying that, I'm remembering my daughter, like when she was 4, the way she would put on these colored tights and a skirt and a hoodie and a hat.
And a vest and the thing and the boots and yeah, you think it's weird, but then you look at a 4-year-old and you're like, oh, yeah, I get it. And that really informed my character, because I immediately understood, oh, she's not stupid. She's open, like you said, and she's seeing the world, and everything is new and exciting. She hasn't formed these opinions, and I think it's like, the whole show is about, we see ourselves one way, and we've told ourselves, oh, this is who I am, and I'm like this, and then all of a sudden something changes, and we go, wait a minute, who am I? What am I? And I think the beauty of Shelley is she was so open that she could accept everyone, and not, I don't think she really put herself in that kind of box.
She was also smart because she was curious.
Right. She's very curious. And, it's when Chris is drawing this, it's all great and wonderful. And, I really think it wasn't about, making people think she's one way or another. She wasn't worried about what people thought.
Again, it's like how each of us respond to the projects of each other in each character, how Shelley it embraces it, and how Joel wrestles with it, and how ultimately Maurice is supportive but doesn't know exactly what he's supporting, and then when Chris gives up, he kind of comes. Janine talks a lot about the small town of it, and how the unity that happens in a town that seems to be lost in the way we exist now. And I just love watching how we all, and it's not treacly. It's like we're there for each other because we want each other's character to become themselves, their full selves. The way Holling talks to Maggie at the bar. I love when Maggie's drunk.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting dynamic to the show.
Yeah, especially today, Rob. I mean, I feel like in the polarized world that we live in, the world of Sicily was just like a utopia, because we all come from these different perspectives. I mean, Rob, in the show, you were talking about how I'm a Republican, and no one where in what's Upper East Side New York or wherever you were from, what is a Republican,
Right?
And I don't know. It just, I think the beauty of Sicily is that we all accepted each other, and accepted our differences.
Right, and it's ironic, and it's the opposite. Like, I'm a Democrat and Janine's a Republican, and her character was a Democrat. But by the way, this is the second time that the show mentions Donald Trump, which I find fascinating. In
Today?
1990.
Was
Yep.
he mentioned in the show? I
Yep.
didn't catch
Yes,
that.
we did.
Yep.
Noticed that.
Where?
There's
Where?
a moment. There's a moment.
Rob mentions him.
Yeah, something
That's
about
so funny.
yeah.
I would call myself actually an independent. I kind of like being thought of as an independent thinker, because
Okay,
I don't like
I'm sorry. You're an
no,
independent.
but I just don't like to get pigeonholed into a party system. Because the irony is, if you think about that particular party system, there's so many aspects of my life where I don't fit into that party system at all, which is ironic. But I love independent thinking. I wish more of us in America were. I think the party system is kind of dividing us a lot. But anywho, I think it's funny when you walk into talk with Cynthia, with Shelley and Holling and Maurice. And they're like, "Oh, poor Maggie, her house burned down." And I caught this. Did y'all catch this? Fleischman, you're like, yeah. Anyway, do you know who Larry Coe is? Totally blew it off. It was that one show where Fleischman he just wasn't even paying any attention to what happened to Maggie. It's like,
so my guess is, I don't know if you remember, because I don't even know if I was there, but they must have built a frame on an empty lot and burnt it, right? Because then they didn't burn down a whole house, but it was very authentic looking.
But maybe they did. Well, it was burning when I went there. It was burning,
right? But I don't think it was a full house. It was just the frame and maybe some veneer or something.
But you think that was the same spot where Corbett and I filmed?
No, I think it was different.
That wasn't exactly where her house was. Yeah, her house.
Yeah, and I also think where they had the burnt out husk of it was somewhere else, because they built that, but it was a great set. When you were wandering around trying to find things, and you find the melted diorama.
Yeah, the melted. Oh, the blob. Every man I've ever dated is now the one big blob.
Yeah, and Chris wants it.
Did you notice I was kind of smiling in that scene? Like that little moment where I had a little humor, like, because I remember looking at him very innocently, going, "You want to fling the blob?"
Right.
But when you cut to my face, there's like a little tiny smile there, and I thought, oh, I was probably getting a kick out of that. Like, you want to fling my blob? Oh, but that set was amazing.
Yeah, beautiful. Once again, Woody Crocker. Yeah, I'm sure it was not easy to build that because it looked real. They obviously had to take things and burn them, but they couldn't burn a whole house. I know that.
Yeah, it was late at night when we did it. It was really late at night, very cold, very dark, and they had the firemen there all around. And I love it when I take my mom. You burned it. I'm like, oh, Mom, I have to. Mom, you're alive. You're alive. This is so life, right? You're alive, Mom. You're alive. And she's like, oh, it's my fault. No, it's not your fault, Mom. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Well, I left the towel, and then I start shaking her. You mean you ruined my house? It's like 1 minute, it's like when I get you just, it's just that juxtaposition of your feelings. It's like, is my mom alive? And then she's like, you burned down my house.
But it's such an interesting thing, like so many people, because we had the fires last year, and last night I was at a party. I mean, I had two separate conversations about people who lost their home, and lost everything they had. And when we were going, when, we had to evacuate, and we ended up down in Palm Springs for a couple of weeks, and every night we'd go to bed and one of us would play philosopher about what does it mean if we wake up tomorrow and everything we own is gone. I mean, that's but like, I think the point of the show ultimately is that act of destruction creates the potential for creativity, for something for creation. Yeah, for the growth to emerge.
It's always through the darkest times that we learn the most, that, we stair step to enlightenment and all that. If you can just swim through it, the abyss.
That's the thing. And that's what the show offers, in subtle ways and in kind of macro ways, this notion of hope, that you can come through these difficulties of life and find your way, and that I, as an audience person, aside from being a part of this, I love that. I mean, I love that that's what we put out in the world. And by the way, more and more I keep running into 20-year-olds that are watching the show, or people tell me about their kids are watching it, which is it's cool that and not just because it's for the ego of it, but because there's a lot of messaging, unconscious and conscious messaging in Northern Exposure that gets out there, and I think the more of that we have in the world, the better we are.
Well, I agree with that. And I love that line of Maggie's though. Mother, if I wanted my house to burn down, I would have burned down my house. It was
Right.
like, you come and you burn down my house. How do you think this fits in with the Larry Coe storyline though? Because it doesn't quite puzzle piece, but it does in a way.
From my perspective, just watching it and having totally forgotten that storyline, no offense, Rob, but just, 30 years later, I forgot the whole Larry Coe part of that story. And I thought it was really interesting because here's a guy who's, again, he's built this life and everyone knows him as this thing. And he's famous for this thing. And that life blew up. It's like your house. I mean, it's gone. It's blown up, and he's created something new. And here he is, going, I'm happy. I'm this person. I'm doing what I want. And Rob is trying to put him back there to be the old person. I mean, he's like, but you're Larry Coe. You're Larry Coe. You're the golfer. And he's like, that's not who I want to be now.
And it's also interesting. I'm just thinking about how he's a chimney sweep.
I was just thinking that. I was waiting for Cynthia to stop. I was just thinking, think about the burning, and he's a chimney sweep.
And I know that Rob is just trying to help him let go, and so that he can have closure and let go. But I think it does. It meshes with all the other storylines. I mean, the chimney sweep and blowing up his life, and now he's. It's interesting how he deals with it. He runs away from it.
Sometimes the stories are not cohesive thematically, and I forgot that. I always thought they were, but as we go through them and we talk to the writers, sometimes they were like, we just needed a C storyline and we stuck it in there, and then we might project on some kind of thematic consistency, but often they're just tacked on there, which is amazing that it still works.
Have either of you ever had a moment where you completely wanted to reinvent yourself? Because I did.
All the time.
Right before Northern Exposure.
This morning.
When I had, yeah, right. When I had but I literally was going to go do it. I had $8 left to my name before Northern Exposure, and I was so depressed and nothing was working in my life. I took my little tiny poodle and I got in a cab to go to LaGuardia Airport to catch a flight to Texas, not to go home to my family, but to go to where my father was born, Athens, Texas. Don't ask me why. And I was going to change my name and become a waitress at a cafe in Athens. And I guess maybe part of the symbolism of that is my father's grandfather, so my great-grandfather had a cafe there, Paul's Cafe in Athens, Texas. But I was going to literally do a Larry Coe. I was going to move to Texas, Athens, Texas, which is far east Texas, and become a waitress in a little small cafe. And if I'm thinking about it, it's exactly what Larry Coe was doing. And I ended up getting lost on the Brooklyn Queen Expressway and saw Manhattan over there, and I just turned back to face my life, which is a good thing I did, or I wouldn't. I got lost and I was like screaming. My poodle was licking my tears off my face. My contacts were blurry. And I'm like, I guess I'll go back to the city because I kind of see it over there, as I was lost. But I almost had a Larry Coe moment. Have y'all had any moments like that?
I remember, so I went to Ole Miss, University of Mississippi, and my junior year, and I was a music major. I sing, and I always wanted to try acting. I'd never really tried it. I'd been in musicals, but not acting, and I wasn't in the drama program, and my brother was in grad school in Los Angeles, and so I talked my parents into letting me go to summer school at UCLA, and with the secret notion of not telling anybody that I wanted to take acting classes. So I went to UCLA for the summer, and from Mississippi, growing up, I call it growing up in my bubble with, most of everyone I was around was, what they believed was the same. They were Republican and Christian, and so I went to the West Coast and was immediately, I was exposed to just so many different people and different ideas and new things. And
did you just show up, or did you have a place to, like, how did you?
No, I went to school at UCLA, and I actually recruited some friends from Mississippi, and they came with me for the summer, and then they went back. And I went to school, and we lived in an apartment, near the UCLA campus
in Westwood.
But at the end of the summer, I had been studying acting, and I called my parents and I said, I'm not coming home. I'm staying. I'm going to be an actress. And my mother said, "What?" And I said, "Well, what did you think? I'm a vocal performance major. I mean, I want to perform. It's kind of," and she said, "Well, I thought you'd just be the church choir. You'd graduate, get married, and be the church choir director like me."
Sounds like Maggie's mother.
Exactly. And I have to, let me please say this. My parents have been so incredibly amazing and supportive of me. So I say that with a laugh because we all laugh about it now. But it's interesting because, I inside knew that I needed something different, that I was not going to be what was, what they expected.
I made 2 attempts to reinvent myself. One when I was 16. The second one I succeeded, but I wanted to act, I think, and my dad wouldn't let me. I was living with him in Florida, and I said I'm running away, and I had all my whatever I had in a box. I didn't even have a suitcase. I had a box, and I called a taxi, and I had sold this bicycle that I had, and I called a taxi, and he came home when I was waiting for the taxi, and I was sitting there at 16 with my box, and I was like, "I'm leaving." And he was like, "Yeah, okay." And he just didn't believe me. I went to the airport. I got on a plane. I had to wait like 10 hours for a cheap plane to Boston because my sister was at the University of Plymouth College at University of New Hampshire. I hitchhiked from Boston to New Hampshire in the winter, right, with my box. Yeah. And I get there, and I was going to go to LA to become a stuntman. That was my plan. I had looked up in some back of some magazine, some stupid magazine, become to Hollywood and become a stuntman. And I was like, I'm a kid, so they probably don't have a lot of kid stuntmans. And I was going, and I spent a week and then, my father got the call, and he was like, "What? You're where?" And I was in New Hampshire, and eventually they talked me down and sent me back. But eventually, a year later, I did the same thing and made it to New York. And I think a lot of us have to. But I guess to your point, Janine, it's the times where you wanted to that you didn't. But I've often thought about, I think it's a great fantasy to reinvent yourself, to start anew, you know, um, which is, sometimes hoisted upon us when events, there's a lot of people in LA right now that are hurting because of the industry compression and after the strikes and COVID and the fire. And a lot of people are, my sister has a podcast. It's called Pivot, and it's about people pivoting into other, directions in their life.
Well, I've reinvented myself a lot with my foundation and my radio shows and things of that nature. And there's a part of it, I'm a little bit Larry Coe because I love living on my ranch in the middle of nowhere. And people come here like, why do you live all out here all by yourself? I'm like, well, I don't know. I guess I just kind of like it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's
Right.
that juxtaposition of being such a public person and then living in the middle of nowhere. But I do think we all have those moments where some of us come back and say, okay, I'm going to turn back around and face it. Maybe I really don't need to be doing this. And some of us just want to move. And it was kind of cool the way he just wanted to go to Greenland. You blew it, Fleischman blew it for him. He couldn't be in Alaska anymore.
Right.
Now he's going to go to Greenland. Kind of a cool whole storyline in itself. And I like the way his hair was always a mess. And
A lot of
Yeah.
messy hair in this episode.
yeah,
You and
true.
Corbett and Larry
Yeah.
Coe, each of the main stories had messy hair.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that's probably a coincidence. And with Corbett, he just probably his hair was long. That's all. He just went through phases with his hair. They should just do a compilation of all his hair.
But I love it when he takes those crosses. My mother's scared of him. Like there's a man in the back of your car, and you see Maggie's face like she doesn't really want to introduce Chris to her mother just because of her more embarrassment of her mother than of Chris. So she wasn't embarrassed of Chris. But then the way he's kind of carrying that big beam, and we all talked about back then, he looked like Jesus.
Totally. And we got to shout out to Rob Thompson again because he did such a nice job with this. There were just so many touches from the grand finale trebuchet to the little subtle moments with you and your mom. I thought he did just a really, really nice job.
I was thinking about that he did. Rob Thompson's amazing. And at that last scene where she forgives her mother, that scene could have been played so many different ways. It could have been without acceptance. It could have been without that moment where she just goes, oh, all right. And I seem to remember, it was 30 years ago, but that Rob and I really probably talked about that. Like, what direction do we want to take this scene? And that's where directors can have such a nuance with performances.
Did he direct you? Rob Thompson, what did he do?
I just seem to remember, and of course it's fuzzy and foggy, but that we had a conversation about the direction that scene could go, and that scene could have gone, she remained sobby, unresolved, angry, and in that scene she actually looked at her mother and kind of accepted her and forgave her, and I think he was guiding me toward that direction.
Yeah, because it gives it an arc. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been what would have been the point, of the story.
But it wasn't written that way.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, it's not really written that she forgives her. She does kind of say, yeah, well, Mom, me too, which I guess, so it was kind of a combination of it was maybe subtly, but the direction that Rob guided me in helped. And that's the great thing about having a wonderful director with, directors that they're directors that come out of film school that just are great technically. We talked about this a lot. Remember that on the set, but they don't know how to work with actors. And so when you get a director that can work technically with a camera and all the things, but also with actors, that's rare.
Well, I think, television, as you guys know, and I mean, it's so different when a director just comes in to a show that's been successful and has been going for several years. And a lot of times that's what would happen is we'd have a director come in and, we've been playing these characters for 2-3 years by this point, but Rob was a producer and he was there and he was with us the whole time. So I think that made a difference as well, because he's got the respect of the crew and the cast, and he's also he knows the characters intimately. He knows how we shoot. He knows the DP really well. And I think there's a difference when, and Rob, you can probably speak to this as because you're a director. When you just come in to direct one episode of a show, I would assume that you're not going to be telling everybody what to do and telling the DP what to do because, they're looking at you going, yeah, we know.
It's a real trial by fire. It's a tricky thing to assert authority over an already established, entity and do it in a way that people trust you. But it's tricky. And sometimes people test you and sometimes they don't, whatever, it's a tricky job to be an actor on a long running TV series. And so sometimes actors are just in shitty moods and they don't want to listen to some new person telling them what to do, or even if, they just don't want to have to deal with it because they know what to do. And so it's a fine line, but I do think to your point, it's like, it's great when someone is there consistently, and you can tell. I think when you look at the shows, the directors that they've been around a couple episodes at least, because they know all of our idiosyncrasies, that we have, the way we each as individual approach the work, and so there's a shorthand because they know. They know you're going to get there. You just have to go through whatever your thing is. And, I think by this point, Rob knew it and the proof is in the pudding and there was something, there's, if you remember that I have this shot in my book, Northern Exposures, from the day we shot the Trebuchet, and it's a shot of all of us sitting in chair.
I love that shot. I have it framed in my house.
It captures this moment of, all of us together as one and yet individuals, and then somehow it feels like when I'm thinking about what Rob did was just to take all of this and make it a unit. And he did that so well.
Yeah, and Cynthia, you make a really good point because when we have a new director come in, and we've been around for so long, you automatically sort of have a little bit of a wall up. Like, can I trust this person, and can I trust the direction where he's taking my character? Because we all know if we go that direction, it's going to end up on the screen, and they're going to see it, and so we're always very protective. So there's just a wall that has to be sort of permeated a bit. But you were so right on about Rob. We trusted him, and and we felt comfortable with him, and you could see it, I think, in the ease of the performances. He used to always say to me, Janine, you get going by like the third take. You know what I mean? It's like the third, fourth, fifth take, you're golden.
Well, I felt like that about a lot of our, like Mike Fresco was one of my favorite directors, who was also one of our producers. Because, there's such you just feel so comfortable and open and honest, and you know that he's got your back. And which, I mean, not to say that there was, I think, for me, anybody who came in, the new directors, there's always something to learn, and you could take it from like, oh, maybe I never thought of it that way, but I do think that I felt the same as far as some of my performances that I was most proud of were with directors that I worked with before and knew, or producers, and
Well, on that note, I feel like we could talk for hours, but Cynthia, it just means we'll have to bring you back yet again.
Yes, because you have so many cool episodes coming up.
You're going to bring me back, and it's actually going to be an episode that I do something.
We will do that. We will make sure. I promise you. Next time you come back, it will be for something that is a big episode for you.
Yeah, like when you get married or have a baby, or you sing the entire episode.
It's much more fun and easier for me to talk about you guys and your amazing, brilliant performances and to watch them than to talk about myself. So we're good.
Cynthia still lives in the Pacific Northwest. You're going to go on the cool, brisk hike, aren't you? What is it? Let me guess. It's 30 and raining. Is it 30 and raining?
No. Well, no, I'm looking outside. It's not raining yet. So I think we're,
like 40 degrees, 42.
Yeah.
Every day I would drive to work on Northern Exposure, and it would be raining, and because I came from New York where it was, it didn't rain a lot, I would say to myself, oh, well, tomorrow it'll be sunny, and every day it would be raining.
And I rode my horse with like 4 layers on.
If you're out there in the audience, you know that you can watch us on YouTube or listen to us wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, and subscribe. Subscribing is a cool
subscribe.
thing because then you get notices and whatnot. And spread the word. Well, Rob, always great to see you again. Cynthia, you're amazing. I love you dearly. It's great
Love
seeing
you
you. So
guys.
much fun. So much fun. We're wrapping today, and we'll see you again next week. And we're signing off from O'Connell and Fleischman.
Actually, I think it should be Fleischman O'Connell.
In your dreams, Fleischman.
Northern Disclosure is a production with Evergreen Podcasts and executive produced by Paul Anderson and Scott McCarthy for Workhouse Media.